Hi everybody! Look what they got at Dollar Tree. Historical document posters! They got historical document posters at the Dollar Tree. This one has historical document posters. It's got the Declaration of Independence, which everybody should read. Should be required reading. And the Bill of Rights, which everybody should read. Should be required reading. Matter of fact, every politician that gets elected needs to freaking read the Bill of Rights again. Because when they take that oath of the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights is part of the Constitution. And, man, these are big, ginormous posters. Bill of Rights is the first 10 rights, by the way. Giant poster. Anyway, anyway, what I'm trying to say is, the politicians need to be rereading this stuff because apparently they don't know what it says because they ain't, doing what it says. Then we got the Declaration of Independence. This is what our founding fathers, Man, they ain't even got the signatures. Turds. Anyway, like 33 guys signed this thing or something. Anyway. And if you actually look up about all the different people who signed this thing, you'll find out that a lot of them was Christians. Anyway, I believe this is, we'll read this. It says, the Declaration of Independence in Congress of July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. There were the 13 colonies. They seceded. They wrote the declaration. They penned it. They made this Declaration of Independence. They sent this to King George, and they said, "We secede from you." It says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people to dissolve the political bands, it might be time to do that again, which have connected them with another peoples, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So they're going to put together all the reasons why. They're putting together the reasons why they're going to secede from Britain. This reasons, which some of these reasons are some of these reasons sound so familiar to what our government's doing today. It says, anyway. But first we have this preamble part. This is the preamble part. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. Creator means God, the God of the Bible, by the way, with certain unalienable rights. That unalienable, meaning the government doesn't make them, God makes them. They're human rights by birth, by nature. That among these are life, so, and abortion's murder, so that's not life. Pro-life is Declaration of Independence approved. Liberty, not being told exactly what to do all the time, having freedoms and liberties to live your life. Constitutional approved. And the pursuit of happiness. We're not guaranteed happiness. We're only guaranteed the pursuit of happiness. Because happiness to one person could mean something, could be different to another person, etc. So, just because I'm happy about something don't mean you're happy about it. So, my happiness might not be your happiness, and thus everybody can't have the same happiness, and thus everybody can only pursue happiness. Makes sense. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Governments is meaning a group of people elected by the group of people. So, like, if there's 10 people, they pick one of the people to be like the spokesman of the 10 people. That's how governments work. A democratic republican democracy. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. See, a government can't exist if the one guy says, hey, you other 9 guys are going to do what I say, or I'm going to knock you in the nose. That's not consent of the government. But that's kind of how our government's working nowadays. They're wanting to knock us in the nose if we don't do right. Throwing us in jail and stuff. That's not consent of the governed. Not exactly. We're not having too much consent of the government anymore. The government doesn't care what the people say just about anymore in some cases. That whenever any form of government, any form, it don't matter whether it's communism, socialism, republicanism, democratism, there's all kinds of different forms of governments out there in the universe. Kingship, etc. Anyways, where was I? When they become destructive to the ends of we the people, of actually doing their job for the people, it is the right. Now, the right, this is another one of our rights. Not necessarily the Bill of Rights, but this is a natural right we have as the people. The right of the people to alter through election, through voting, through revolution, and through getting in office in politics to steer the course of the government toward the way of the people. Alter. And if altering don't work, or to abolish it. Abolish, revolution, overthrow, decapitate, destroy, eliminate, replace, put in power a new one, and institute a new government. Might be time to do that soon. Especially in some of those Democrat-controlled states. Laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So basically, the people can make their own government and get rid of that old government, which means secession was in the Declaration of Independence approved when the South wanted to secede, and any state that wants to secede, they have the right to do so right here. Bam! Declaration of Independence says so. Because for their own safety and their own happiness and their own well-being, and prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient cases. So we shouldn't just change the government for like something small, little bitty, something small. Don't need to change the government just because some little stuff happened. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. People get accustomed to the way things are, and instead of rising up and changing things, they're just like, oh, whatever. But when a long train of abuses and aspirations, which we've had in our government now, pursuing invariably the same object, devises a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. I think this mask mandates and these social distancing mandates is some despotism, among other things that we have there. It is their right. It's the right of the people. It is their duty, the duty of the people, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies. So the colonies, they was patient. They petitioned their government. They did this. They did that. They peaceful protest by throwing some tea. They did various different things. They even peaceful protested by raiding a military base. Very different things. Kind of like the rioters they're doing now, except for they're rioting in their peaceful protest riot in capitalism controlled areas. I don't think that's necessarily peaceful protest. But the colonists, they threw the tea away. They did all kinds of different things to protest the various different injustices. They met at the local pubs and the bars and stuff, and various different things to discuss. They even sent letters, all kinds of different stuff to try to be like, we want representation in the parliament. Come on, King. We don't mind being colonies, but we want to say in the government. And the king kept rejecting them and making their taxes higher, and just like our government does today, and making their taxes higher and taking away more of their rights and liberties and all that good stuff. And such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. So they got fed up with it, and they're like, "We done. Time to alter the system of government and make a new one." The history of the present sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated, multiple times, injuries and usurpations. Anyway, they need to use modern English and rewrite this in English words instead of the old school English. All having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states.
Yes!
To prove this, let facts be submitted to the candid world.
Yes! My God! Help me!
Now, they start telling you some of the actual reasons for the secession. Here are some reasons. Reason 1. Would y'all go home somewhere? So anyway, they started listing the various different things that the king did. The first one they listed was, he has refused to assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. So they told him that they needed certain laws for the best of the public good and safety, and the government, which was the king at that time, totally disobeyed the laws that he even gave to the people. He didn't even obey his own laws. Sound familiar? I think politicians seem to do that nowadays. Our own government won't even obey its own rules that they give to us to obey. Second reason they gave was, he has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when no suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. So basically, he didn't give the power to the governors of the colonies, and so that they could, get things accomplished immediately. And instead, he he said they couldn't do anything without his approval, and they couldn't do anything until he got there and discussed it, or they came to him to discuss it, or whatever, which is basically kind of like our government does now, in a sense where the states don't have the rights against the federal government anymore, and the states have to rely and wait until the federal government tells them, and then we have Congress, and then Congress has to go to the House, and House has to go to the president, and we have too much deliberating and debating and this, instead of going directly to the local establishment and getting things done. We can't get things done because we got to go through all the runaround. Basically, they wanted limited government, smaller government with less runaround to get stuff accomplished fast. That's what they wanted. Limited, small government to get things done, accomplished fast. The local leaders should have been able to pass laws and run their own towns their way, basically. 3. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislatures, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Basically, he wouldn't let cities have representation in parliament of the government. He allowed people to create areas where people could live, but then he didn't allow them to make their districts so that they could then send a representative to Congress. In the same sense, we kind of have that problem now, where we have set districts, and we now have set amount of representatives, and each representative nowadays, there's 100 senators, 2 for every state, because that's the Senate. But Congress is set at like 250 or something like that. Anyway, it's set to a small number, and the population is growing and growing and growing, and now each person that runs a district is representing millions and millions of people, and it doesn't seem that we're having a good enough representation, in my opinion, when one person represents millions of people. So they wanted more representation in government through electing someone, creating districts, and then electing an elector to go to parliament. Well, nowadays we have districts, but the districts have millions of people in them, and it's pretty hard for a single individual to represent millions of people, in my opinion. So this is kind of happening now, too. 4. The fourth thing is he has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Basically, secret meetings. Secret meetings. Non-public meetings, secret meetings. Secret meetings where they do secret stuff behind the people's back, and then they create rules, laws, or whatever to then tell the people what to do. Our government does that today. Our government does secret meetings. There are certain meetings that elected officials do with behind closed doors, where they are off the record and whatnot, and they're not being public, and it's not complete transparency of government going on. So we have this problem too, because we have a lot of secrets. Secret meetings. Secret meetings. Secret deals. Secret this, secret that. Secrets that we're not privy to, the American people The public are not privy to this knowledge, this information, this stuff. So that's another problem. So we have that same problem today. Should be no secrets. Total transparency of government. Everything public, everything declassified, no secrets, damn it. The American people deserve to know everything. End of discussion. We had a problem about our founding fathers believed that, so why not us? Number 5. I think this is 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, number 5. Number 5. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with many firmness his envisions of the rights of the people. So what he did was, when they did create their own like little districts and their own like little representatives, he totally like either had them arrested, dissolved them, didn't listen to them, or any of that. Well, I don't know, but we kind of have sort of a problem with that nowadays when people try to put anybody other than the two parties for electing. Everybody else who's running for any office, independents, other third-party candidates, seem to be pushed to the sidelines and kept out of the debates, out of the talking, even out of the media. So we kind of have that problem now where our two-party government pushes anybody else out of the way, which is kind of the same thing this king did, basically. Even if what they have to say is something worthy of what they had to say and is good for the people. 6. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their excuse, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasions from without and confusions within. Okay, in this case, he didn't allow the military to stay. He didn't protect his citizens. They weren't staying at home. The military wasn't really staying at home. And he wasn't allowing the people back home to have their own legislative bodies. The military was being used for his own purposes instead of the purposes of protecting the people. The military and police kind of have some of the same problems now. And this also matches in with 7, which says, he has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and rising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He wouldn't let people travel. No right to travel. We kind of have a problem with it nowadays, where they won't let you go places, and if you go certain places, you have to be able to do certain things. And you have to have driver's license, and you have to have proof of insurance, and you have to have various these things to be allowed to use the roads and to travel. 8. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He wouldn't allow them to have judges in their own country. Instead, all the judges had to go all the way back to England. All the judges had to be approved by him. They weren't allowed to have any elected or appointed representative judges for the local areas and stuff. 9. He has erected a multitude of new... 9 goes with the judges. I skipped 1. He has made judges dependent on his will alone, which I was saying earlier, for the tenure of their offices and amount and payment of their salaries. So basically, all judges were getting paid by the government, which was him, and if they judged anything the way the king didn't agree with, they would get fired. We have a Supreme Court that has lifetime appointments, and we kind of don't have that problem now. But the Supreme Court seems to tend with whoever's in power at the time nowadays. So we do sort of kind of have this problem a little bit now. 10, I think. Yeah, that was 9. This is 10. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Okay, so the king created all these other agencies. And the agencies then inflicted their will on the people to enforce rules and laws that aren't even constitutional or aren't even legal, basically. For example, we have a whole bunch of government agencies that inflict their will on the people, and these are created agencies by the executive branch, and they need to be a little bit abolished because they're unconstitutional. IRS, some of them created by the legislative branch, and IRS, ATF, CIA, FBI, etc. A whole bunch of ABC organizations that were added by Congress or the presidency. We have them nowadays. We have the same problem. We have the same exact problem in our government today. They add agencies and new offices, create new departments, and then these new departments create their own rules and their own things, and they go and enforce that agency's will on the people instead of obeying the Constitution or getting congressional approval before doing something and stuff. 11. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. Using the military, a standing army military, as a police force to arrest and detain any saboteurs, anything. We kind of have that problem today because we have a military-style police force. Number 12 or 13. He's affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power, meaning the military is not part of like our military now and our police now are under the authority of the mayors and the governors and the presidency. Their military was not under the authority of the local government, but under the authority of the federal government, which our military kind of is getting that way. And it's a form of martial law that was unnecessary he was doing. Next one, or I think 14. I guess it's 14, I'm not sure. It's probably going to be 2 parts of this video. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, given his assent to their acts of pretending legislators. Okay. We have the same problem with our government today, too. Basically, they made treaties with foreign governments. And by making these treaties with foreign governments, it made the local governments of the colonies subject to laws of foreign nations. Just like when our government makes a deal with the United Nations, it puts America where we have to follow international law. And it makes international law supposed to be override the Constitution. Well, the Constitution should override international law. It takes away the sovereignty of the nation when our governments make deals with foreign nations that to make said deals, we have to strip away our own laws and our own rules and our own rights and our own sovereignty to our own people when we do so. That is a problem. Now, I think this is 15, maybe 16. I don't know. I lost count. Another one is for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. They even passed a right in the Bill of Rights that says you don't have to quarter troops. Because of this right here. The military were allowed to just come in, take your land, take your stuff, and make a base during the Revolutionary War and even before so. So, whatever the military decided to do, they just did it. They did it. Okay? There was nothing that people could do about it because the military had supreme power. We kind of have that same problem a little bit today when police are just, not getting warrants, not getting search warrants, or doing no-knock warrants, or doing at-night warrants, where they wake a judge up just to get a warrant so they can go and invade your area. 16 is for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any members which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. Basically, the military was able to get away with it. The police were able to get away with it. They created fake trials so they could get away with it. And they had no accountability to the... When we got some of that problem now... I mean, we do have some of that problem now. We have a lot of that problem now with a whole lot of non-accountability for different agencies within the government, civilian agencies and military agencies, where they can literally just come in, do stuff, and do whatever they want, sort of. And now we're getting to some more of the stuff. And we're also probably getting into part 2, maybe, I don't know, of the video, second video. I don't know how much it allows me to record. It's still recording? Okay, it might not be part 2. Anyway, this is like 17 maybe, I don't know, anyway, or 18. I lost count. There's so many different reasons. Anyway, this one's for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. Basically, they wouldn't allow the colonists to have independent trade. In America, we don't really have that problem because states and cities are allowed to have independent trade to other nations, to each other, and all that. But in this day, they wouldn't let trade... Well, we have a little bit of that problem, but not as much. Because we do have trade deals and we do have federal approval of trade and different things, but we don't have as much of it. Basically, the colonies weren't allowed to trade at all with anybody. Only the crown was allowed to trade. For imposing taxes on us without our consent, too much taxes, taxation is theft, too much taxes. They didn't like all these taxes. We don't like all these taxes today. Don't we have the same problem today? Too many taxes. Too many taxes. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. See, some of these things mentioned in here is why they were put in the Bill of Rights, because they're mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. Basically, people were arrested without any trials. Don't we have some of that same thing today? We have secret arrests where people get arrested and they are sent to, because of the Patriot Act, right? Where people can get arrested and detained and disappear, and no one ever hears from them again because they might be terrorists or something. They're denied their constitutional rights and stuff. Don't we have a lot of these? Don't we have military tribunals, random things like that, where they're not getting their trial by juries? We got some of that problem nowadays too. For transponding us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Basically, the same thing we did with the Japanese in internment camps, the same thing we did with terrorists or suspected terrorists, and we sent them to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, various different places, and we try them there instead of as public for here in America when they are American citizens. Now, if they're not American citizens, I could understand these non-public trials if for foreigners. I would think that unless that country, their home country, gave us permission to try them, their home country should be the ones trying them for these injustices. Yeah. Here's another one. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlightening its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and the instrument and institution for introducing the same absolute rule into the colonies. So, instead of letting the colonies decide for themselves, the king and the crown appointed their own. The king appointed his own magistrates and own government leaders instead of the people getting to it. So we kind of have a problem with that too, with appointed positions, and sometimes the government will put someone in power somewhere and in control of something without the people of that area's consent, and the people didn't actually vote for that person to be in control. Like when, say, for example, the FBI comes in and a local FBI agent that is put in charge of the case comes in and he says, "I'm the boss now." Well, that's the same problem basically. When he appointed a commander or a ruler, which a lot of the times these were military commanders that were appointed to be in control of certain areas. We have that same problem now when a government agent, a federal government agent from some agency comes in and he's like, "I'm the boss now. I want you to do this, this, that, this, and the other. Blah, blah, blah." Has no authority by the local people, is not elected, and really, honestly, has no power, or should have no power at all. We have the same problem. Here's another one. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. So basically, they had charters. Each colony had a charter, which was like a state constitution. What he did was he came in, threw their state charter in the garbage, overrided their state charter or their state constitution or their colonial charter, and basically said that the states do not have the rights, or the colonies do not have the rights. Instead, only the federal government has control and rights. We kind of have some of the same problem with this one too, where the states are losing more and more of their power as the federal government gets bigger and bigger. The state governments are the ones that are supposed to have the power, and the local government, well, actually, here's how the power is supposed to be distributed in the American government. We the people have the most power. Then the local government, city, county, has the next amount of power. Then the state has the next power. Then the federal government has the least power. It's a trickle down effect, not a trickle up effect. The federal government has the least power, while we the people have the most power. But now it's been flipped on. Our government has flipped it over and made the federal government have the most power, and we the people have the least power. Well, it's not supposed to go, the power structure is not supposed to go federal, state, local, people. It's power structure that our founding fathers established, and part of it was because of what the king, what we've seceded from did. Our system is family, we the people, we the people, we the people, so the family, we the people, individual, so basically individual liberty, family, structure, local government, which could have been a church, could have been a religious institution, or could have been a city, or could have been a county. Any of those could have been the local institution, then a state institution, then the federal institution. That is the structure of power. Power, they believed, was mostly individual liberty and freedom. I don't know what number I am, so I'm not even saying numbers anymore. For suspending our own legislators and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us all in all cases whatsoever. They got rid of the local legislatives and appointed somebody in power. Which is basically, again, we have the same problem with that when a federal agency, a federal department creates rules and laws, like say for example the Environmental Protection Agency. If the EPA comes in and they see a local area is too contaminated, they can come in, take over, and there's nothing the local authorities can do about it. I'm just giving that as an example. So we have the same problem now that they had back then with the crown. Another one is he has abducted government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. Not only did he Not only did he do that, but he sent troops against his own citizens. He started a civil war, basically. We kind of have a little bit of that problem where our governments will send police to enforce rules that aren't necessarily constitutional, or they'll send in military to assist. Now, sometimes for example, FEMA, National Guard, sometimes these cases are actually done good, but it could be used to be done in a bad way too. So you need to be careful distinguishing when to use it in a good way or a bad way. Just, because it could be considered waging war against the people if done in a bad way, which is what the crown did. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. So he did the same thing Antifa's doing. He had the military destroy basically assault the people and attack the people and destroy whole entire towns, villages, whatever, all because the people wouldn't do right. Basically, he was tyrannical. Our government, in some cases, will literally, for example, Waco, that's an example, will literally come in and destroy a whole entire commune or whatever because they don't believe the people are doing right. So we've had that same problem in our government. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, dissolution, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. Well, since the freedom fighters, the American Revolutionary militia guys were kicking the British's butt, he had to go and get mercenaries from other countries to join his military. And the mercenaries didn't have any what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't have any code of conduct, basically. And when the mercenaries came in, they did way worse acts than the military was already bad, doing bad stuff. But then when these mercenaries came in, they did stuff the military people would, which had a sense of a little bit of a sense of morality. Doing on the case that they were Catholics, probably mostly, but some of these foreign mercenaries were from. They didn't have any code of ethics, codes of conduct, or sense of morality as Christian or Catholic or anything, and they came and they did way worse stuff than the British troops did. He got mad at the citizens so much that he sent people, and he didn't care what happened to him now, basically. We have not really, we kind of have that problem today, sort of, when the government hires subcontractors